Hello, everyone, and welcome to the basically first podcast that I've had the chance to participate in and basically also single-handedly host in pretty well ages in terms of a time frame, although I guess that's kind of hard to quantify. But anyway, if you don't recognize my voice, I'm Justin Joseph, and even though it's rather debatable, I am still the editor-in-chief of ProjectCOE.com. So I'm more or less just right under Jared Nickel there, as you often hear him along with Stephen Lacroix and whoever else participates in the site's Canadian Gamers podcast series. And I do commend those gentlemen for the efforts and time that they have put in to that series. It's quite impressive. I mean, over 25 episodes in just a handful of months is certainly nothing to scoff at. It's quite the feat, and I do very much enjoy the content that they put out with those, the different conversations, all the different banter, and then making fun of each other and of things, various gaming related topics and what have you. So really good stuff there. Now, why am I recording this on my own? Well, honestly, it's because I don't really have a choice in the matter, and even though that's somewhat unfortunate, what am I going to do? I wanted to have the opportunity to do something like this for the longest time, and I just haven't really nailed down a way of actually being able to do it consistently. But here I am now, and hopefully this will be a long-running series that everyone can enjoy, myself included, obviously. In terms of what I would call it, well, that's a good question. It's actually kind of funny because when I first recorded this episode, I had done it on the way home from work, and I'm actually thinking that I'm going to be doing that on a fairly regular basis, so we'll see just how that turns out. But I don't really know either way what I'm going to name this series. I'm thinking of possibly, on the drive home or driving home or COE mobility, whatever, and those are obviously very different ideas, but given that I am COE's more or less primary mobile apps and reviews, whatever you want to call me, reviewer at this point, in terms of my life and my being a part of the COE family and what have you, it at least makes sense in that regard. So, yeah, I'm Justin, so I do welcome you to this first episode. What's going on with me in terms of, just life in general, what have I been up to, what's happening with me? Well, if you follow my confessions op-eds at all on the site, I think I have 10 of them if I'm not mistaken, you would know that I am now married, and I think that I'm the only person in the COE staff that actually is, which is kind of interesting, I guess. But, so yeah, I've been married. I got married last October to my wonderful wife, Christine. I love her to death, and she's definitely God's gift to me, and I would never trade her for anything. She's just a wonderful wife and a real superb cook and all kinds of great things. I mean, I could list off a bunch, but I don't really have time for that, and I figure you're not really that interested in those details anyway. But we've been together for a little over 7 months now, at least in terms of marriage. Relationship-wise, probably about a year and a half or so. I can't really quantify it per se off the top of my head, but that's, again, irrelevant. So, anyway, now with that introduction out of the way, what exactly is my goal with these recordings? I mean, like I said, I don't know what I'm going to call them. And if you actually have an idea yourself, feel free to email me, Justin at ProjectCOE.com, and offer any suggestions that you might have. And please, offer them in good taste if you don't mind, if you're going to go ahead and do that, because I'm not interested in immaturity or anything suggestive or anything like that. Just, a straight, simple name for this series. So by all means do that if you so wish. But my goal, well, nothing really complicated per se. Given that, I've desired actually to be a participant in the Canadian Gamers podcast. I mean, they kind of discriminate with that, Canadian Gamers. I mean, I know that half the staff is probably from Canada, but that's no real reason to leave us out in the cold, I guess. But that's just me anyway. But anyway, since I have wanted to participate in those podcasts and I can't, basically, for time reasons and various others, I figured I could use this series, my own, to possibly have sort of a, I guess a hybrid podcast of sorts. Just kind of dealing with ways that I could possibly expound upon the topics that Jared and Steve and whoever else participates, possibly Marc Andre and Ahmed, whoever happens to be on there, the topics that they discuss. They obviously did a lot of E3 content this year, and I wasn't able to be really a part of it, even though I did do a confessions article kind of expressing my sort of poking fun opinions of the different companies. But, I would have liked to have been a part of that conversation, but since I can't, might as well be able to do it at least in an indirect kind of way. So that's, I guess, what I'll choose to do, in place of that. And then, as I kind of said, hybrid. I don't want to do just that, since, again, I am basically the go-to / primary, whatever adjective you want to throw out there, the primary person to critique mobile content for the site. And, obviously there's hundreds of thousands of apps out there, and one person can never possibly cover them all. And I do know that Jared has written a few pieces in the past on a couple of apps that he's downloaded on his iPhone or his iPad. I'm not sure which device he uses for that stuff, but he's reviewed a few in the past. But at the same time, he's also typically swamped with trying to cover the latest and greatest PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo game, whatever is the new hot thing out there right now. So given that he's done that, I'm more or less going to attempt to, I guess, basically express my own personal opinion on, things that I'm experiencing from a new app, new game standpoint, or, to express my opinion on devices in general, or just, possibly discuss news, the news that comes out about mobile content, mobile devices, apps coming out, things along those lines. Now, you will have to understand that since I am basically Android-centric, I won't really be able to talk much about the Apple stuff from an actual personal experience standpoint. So that's kind of unfortunate, but, I can't really do anything about that. And that's, of course, why you've seen basically all of my reviews focusing on the Android side of the games, because I have sort of as a note in each of those reviews that I have played those games on my HTC Thunderbolt, which is my smartphone, and well, that's the one I got, and it's the only one I have, and I'm certainly not going to try to purchase everything out there. So I could basically just do what is reasonable for me, and I'm certainly not going to go out of my way to cover every last little thing, because, it just isn't realistic, and I'm fine with that. And, I'm sorry if that disappoints you guys, but, I just ask that you bear with me and understand, and hopefully we can both enjoy this series together. And by all means, every time I do one of these, you're more than welcome to leave me a comment of some sort, either on the site or wherever Jared happens to upload it. I'm not sure what even the web services that we use, in addition to iTunes, of course, and wherever else it happens to be. You can, of course, always visit the website at www.projectcoe.com. We have content there pretty much every day, brand new. In addition to YouTube, Project COE. Twitter, we have Project_COE as our handle there, in addition to our Facebook page. And I think that's it in terms of our social media participation. But anyway, I'm getting off on too many rabbit trails. I really want to focus on doing what I came here to do, and that's to introduce my first episode about mobile content. So what is my opinion about the two devices that I personally own? And as you probably remember, or at least hopefully do, my smartphone is the HTC Thunderbolt 4G on the Verizon network from, obviously, HTC. And tablet-wise, I own now the Asus Transformer Pad, which is the successor both in model and in price to the Asus Transformer Prime. In terms of the Thunderbolt, it's definitely a good phone, a good device, but I think, as I have been in the past, I think I was bitten by being an early adopter of the 4G technology. It's certainly great. The speeds, whenever they work properly, very fast, blazing. I mean, I don't understand how California, as I seem to read about on various forums, gets these 20 to 30 megabytes per second download speeds, because I've never even gotten close to that. I guess it just depends on your specific device and where you happen to be in the country. But nonetheless, I have what I have, and that's all there is to it. I think I typically cap out at around 5 to 7 megabytes, which, is pretty good when it actually does work. Like I said, it's typically, unfortunately, unstable and generally unreliable, especially in my work building. And I do know that the signal is not designed to penetrate thick walls and everything, but I think that's kind of lame considering the amount of moolah that you put out there for this kind of service. But, I guess what am I, who am I to complain? I also do at least have unlimited data. I don't get capped out or anything. I don't have to worry about excess data charges on my bill, so that's always nice because I have a family plan that has been grandfathered in for like the past 10 years or so, which is very nice. The device overall, it's nice. I mean, it's what you, I guess, would expect from a first generation 4G device. It's got all the typical bells and whistles of those kinds of phones and everything, with the camera that takes pictures and videos. You can surf the web. You got the Play Store where you can download every app that's available on the Android market and so on and so forth. And you can obviously customize it pretty well. Now, if you're asking me about rooting the thing, taking over the administrative functions of the device, let me just say right now, I'm not bold enough to do that and likely never will be, so just don't even bother suggesting it to me. I'm not interested in bricking any of my devices, especially, a cell phone that if I did, mess it up myself, I have, no phone, basically, and I would have to pay the retail price for a brand new replacement, and I'm simply not going to take that risk, and the same goes for my tablet. But, if you have the Thunderbolt like I do, you're probably feeling the same way I do about it. I am definitely looking forward to upgrading it this coming April of 2013. I don't know what will be out on the market, obviously, when that time comes, but it should be pretty neat to see as the technology, both the 4G and the actual device itself, technology evolves and the different features that they will continue to add and improve, and of course the devices themselves with the hardware and the specs and things like that. From a tablet standpoint, the Asus Transformer Pad, it is a fairly slick little tablet. It's 10.1 inch diagonal. It's got the quad-core Tegra 3 processor. I'm not sure about the GPU. I believe that they're both dedicated. I don't think that there's shared memory on that. It's got the 1 gigabyte of RAM, if I'm not mistaken. Mine has 16 gigabytes of onboard storage. Also has the SD card slot where I can, obviously expand the memory. The mini HDMI port where I can hook it up to a TV like mine, and most other households have an HD TV with an HDMI port, so I can see it on a big old screen. I don't actually have the cable yet, but I do plan on purchasing one like on Amazon for $5 or something, because it's absolutely insane what these retail businesses try to sucker you into with $50 gold-plated HDMI cables. That's incredibly retarded. But that's obviously a rabbit trail there that I don't want to go down. In terms of the tablet overall, it's actually kind of interesting. I've not actually really experienced much in terms of personal failure on my or on my electronic devices in the past, but this one did. And it's a good thing, the timing of it, because it was about a week before my 30-day return policy was going to be up, and the thing just literally died. It wouldn't receive a charge. It wouldn't turn on. Nothing. It just became a $400 paperweight, and I definitely wasn't pleased by that, but you can't really do anything about that. But thankfully I was able to return the thing and get a brand new unit, and I do have my second one with me, and I very much enjoy it, and I do hope that it doesn't fare the same fate. But in terms of the experiences that I've had on it, not nearly as many. I mean, I don't use it as often as my smartphone just because it's smaller, easier to carry around and just whip out anytime that I would need it. But it is a very nice device. I mean, in terms of the complaints that I've seen about the Wi-Fi and the brightness, I'm not really seeing. I basically had what I need, the experience that I expected, and it's nothing really bad at all. I've played games-wise. I've played Dead Space. from EA. I've played Need for Speed, also from EA, Hot Pursuit, that being the game specifically. Let's see, I've also played Shadowgun from Mad Finger. I'm now playing Nova 3 on it, and Modern Combat 3, I believe, in terms of sophisticated games. I've played various other single-player ones like Air Attack, HD, and Zenonia, which is that Zelda-like game, and various other multiplayer ones with my brother-in-law and wife. Like there's Glow Hockey, and I could name off a half a dozen if I wanted to, and way more than that. I don't feel the need to get into that anyway. But overall, I'm very pleased with the device. Ice Cream Sandwiches is pretty neat. It does come on board with that operating system-wise. My phone, unfortunately, still has Gingerbread, and I really doubt that HTC is actually going to release an ICS update to that phone, because it was, sort of the first generation, like I was saying before. So I think that they're going to be much more focused on their newer devices than anything else. And that's perfectly fine. I understand that. And Android is it can, just like Apple. I mean, the two different platforms, they have their pros and cons. And unfortunately, one of the cons of Android is that it's not a unified operating system. All the different companies can basically manipulate it as they so choose to do so on their own devices, and obviously that results in apps being not optimized across the board for some people. But at least if you do have, one of the more popular, latest and greatest, like, the Samsungs, the HTCs, so you got the Motorola's and the Googles and what have you. If you have one of those, then you're pretty much guaranteed to have a pretty stable environment on your phone. So that's always a good and encouraging thing. So that's basically it, my brief opinions on my two devices there. In terms of apps, I am playing Nova 3, and that's the game I hope to review within the next month or so. It's kind of funny that I reviewed both Nova and its successor pretty much 2 years after they came out, but obviously being the only one on the site, more or less providing that content, you have to start somewhere. And I really didn't just want to jump into the later games. I wanted to provide the content that came before it if it was actually available. So that's the reason why I chose to do that. Nova 3, definitely a pretty slick game. Haven't really gotten too much into it. I finished the first mission, and I'm part of the way through the second. Graphics-wise, you simply cannot argue the fact that it's probably the best-looking game on the mobile scene, bar none. If not the most, or one of the most anyway. 2 gigabytes of data in that package, that definitely tells you a lot of how much content and data was shoved into that little package that Gameloft has released. And it obviously is the third in that series, the sci-fi kind of Halo-ish franchise, and it's obvious. Gameloft is basically known for directly copying, not directly, but very much being inspired by many popular current modern-day franchises, especially on the consoles. Obviously with Modern Combat, you have Call of Duty. With Six Guns, you have Red Dead Redemption, Red Dead or whatever, I don't remember the names, I'm sorry about that. And of course Nova, you have Halo, and I'm not sure if any of their other series have been compared to anything else out on the market that's popular, but that's basically irrelevant at that standpoint. So Nova 3, let's see, so far, gorgeous visuals, very good music, decent voice acting. It certainly keeps on improving from iteration to iteration in the Nova series. In terms of gameplay, it's very challenging because, if you have, excuse me, got an itch in my throat there. If you've had a chance to follow any of the brief conversations that I've had with our executive director, Jared Nickel, on our actual site whenever I've published reviews for all those kinds of games, from the mobile scene, we've basically gotten into talking about, what's the disparity between having touch screen only controls and the actual physical sticks, the analog sticks, the digital inputs, and the other buttons and what have you. And, if we're really honest with ourselves, there's a humongous difference. And if you don't think so, well, more power to you. If you are an ace at using touch screen only controls, then congratulations. I'm sure that you own everybody that you play online with in those games. But for the rest of us normal people, that don't spend hours upon hours upon hours, excuse me, mastering those kinds of things. Well, it's quite a different story to say the least. So, in terms of the controls, they're not terrible, but strangely enough, they're not as good as Modern Combat 3's because you can't customize them to the extent that you can in Modern Combat 3. And by that, I mean you can't shift around all the different icon inputs that are located on the touchscreen. Like especially the reload, it's basically at the top of the screen and you can't move it down at all. So that kind of makes it sort of cumbersome to try to reload and keep your bearings whenever you're, involved in the heavy action of that game. And it's pretty heavy action. So I'm not really sure why Gameloft chose to do that. And of course, the beauty of mobile gaming is that these developers can very easily and conveniently issue updates to these games and what have you. So, in the future, if they so choose to do so, they can very much do that. And I really very much hope that they do, because it's kind of a pain to have to move your hand completely off of your main inputs just to reload your gun, which is obviously a very important function in a shooter of this kind of nature. So not really understanding that, but nonetheless, overall, it's a very entertaining game. The different weapons, I mean, the visuals are great, and the sound is great too, especially from the weapons. You have your submachine gun, as is typical in this series, along with the shotgun, and you have a rocket launcher and your explosives, your sniper rifle and pistol, and so on and so forth. So, it's not a perfect game. For some reason, I've noticed, even in the short time that I've played it so far, that the enemy AI is not really up to snuff for some reason. They seem to get frozen in place and just not really do anything at times, and I'm not really sure if that has to do with a lesser optimization for my particular device, because truth be told, Gameloft actually just recently unlocked that particular game for use on the Asus Transformer pad, which was kind of interesting because they should definitely be on the ball when it comes to new devices, especially as popular as this one, and paying attention to what games that they should allow to be played on those devices. But that's another rabbit trail I don't want to go down. Anyway, it's certainly not a terrible game at all. I wouldn't say that it's excellent quite yet. I'm definitely having a lot of fun with it, again, with the time that I have spent, which is probably around half hour or so, give or take. So that's my initial impressions, and you can take that for how you will. In terms of other lesser sophisticated games, I'm really trying to finish Zenonia, which is a Zelda-like franchise from Gameville. They have 4 of those iterations out there, and I'm obviously sadly behind on that, but again, you have to start somewhere, and I had to start at the beginning, so hopefully I can finish that soon. I think I have 2 dungeons left at that, if I'm not mistaken, so hopefully I can take care of that soon. I've also played, sort of on a casual basis, I've played Cut the Rope, I've played Plants vs. Zombies, also X-Men, and I'm also trying to get into the Mass Effect Infiltrator on my phone because it's sadly not available for my tablet. I don't know why, but hopefully EA makes that available soon. But in terms of reviews, Nova 3 is what I will be focusing on because that is, a very current game, and I want to make sure that we have at least something, along those lines on the site to be able to be happy about and for people to actually come and enjoy, because most of my mobile reviews have been from games, 6 months ago or longer, even with Shadowgun, as I did that one not too long ago. So that's more or less what I'm participating with from a gaming standpoint. And I also, of course, enjoy casual stuff. There's nothing wrong with, playing games like Fruit Ninja or Words with Friends, Scramble with Friends, Hanging with Friends, or things along those lines. But I do have to confess, I do not understand the appeal of Angry Birds. I know that is a multi-million-dollar selling franchise. There's merchandise out for it of all sorts now. I think if I heard correctly, they're doing a movie on it soon, but I just don't get it. I played it, and it bored me to death within the first 5 minutes because, yeah, you shoot a bird in a slingshot at a bunch of pigs. Yeah, it's got physics and everything, but I'm sorry, more power to the people that love that franchise. I do not care. You can like it. I'm not going to give you grief over it, but I simply do not see the appeal. It's not fun to me at all, and I will simply not play it ever again. So do not ask me about that. So I think that more or less takes care of the handful of things that I wanted to cover there. In terms of news, kind of interesting. I mean, mobile gaming news isn't really as prevalent, obviously, as console and portable news is, but there is from time to time something to talk about. I guess if nothing else, I can discuss a couple of games that I'm aware of that are being prepared for release in the coming future. One of them being, I'm not sure if it's Tekken or Capcom. I think it's Street Fighter X Tekken, if I'm not mistaken. I think Capcom is releasing that for the Apple devices in the near future, so that should be pretty cool for those who enjoy fighters. And then Gameloft, who happens to be a very prominent mobile game developer. I don't know how they have so many resources to put out these kinds of games that they do on a regular basis, but I came across recently that they are putting together a game adaptation for The Dark Knight Rises, which is very interesting because I don't even think that we've heard anything from a console standpoint or even handheld about a game like that coming out to sort of tie into the movie. I don't know if this one does. I know nothing outside of the trailer. It looks like it might be its own independent game. I'm not entirely sure. Possibly, a prequel to it. Who knows? You can possibly correct me if you wish to, but I guess that's kind of irrelevant. But Batman is coming to Android and Apple devices. I didn't quite remember the release date. I think obviously it's coming out next month, or is it even this month? I'm not sure. I'm so terribly prepared for this podcast, you can tell by now, obviously. But whenever it comes out, you'll have Batman available to play for you in a 3D perspective if you would so choose to do so. So be on the lookout for that if that tickles your fancy. So I think that is more or less all that I really wanted to say. I basically went way over the time limit that I was trying to keep myself to. I was hoping for more of a 20-minute kind of recording, but given that I wasn't really pleased by the quality of the recording as I was driving home from work, and like I said, I do want to try to have it be done in that respect, and I guess I just have to try to concentrate on reducing the ambiance noise from the traffic that I was, obviously opposing coming home, to be able to do these things more on a regular basis and not have to feel so rushed as I do now. But given that I decided to redo this recording, I guess I ended up blabbing just a little bit more than I was anticipating. But nonetheless, that's not important. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and hopefully I will continue to be able to do these on a week-to-week. Wow, I can really talk. You can tell. It's kind of funny. I used to be very obsessive over trying to sound perfect, especially with my video reviews that I used to do on our YouTube channel. But obviously, since I don't have time to worry about editing or sounding perfect, you will get me all natural, and I'm sure you would much rather have that anyway, so you can obviously laugh at all of my verbal discrepancies and failures and fails, whatever you want to call them, and things along those lines. So once again, hopefully you enjoyed this, and I do ask that you would, possibly rate this podcast as you hopefully do Canadian gamers. Leave me a comment on the site or on iTunes, whatever the case might be. And I do appreciate your listening in to this first episode of, like I said, I don't know what I'm going to call it, whether it's going to be COE mobility, whether it's going to be the drive home, on the drive home, hearing a bunch of noise in the background podcast, who knows? If you have a suggestion, again, by all means, email me one or say something in the comment section wherever you happen to be listening to this particular recording. So thank you for tuning in. I will hopefully be back sometime, possibly later this week or next week. I'm going to try to make this a weekly series because these are fun to do, and like I said a long time ago, I missed being able to do these and participating with the guys on a regular basis. And, if this is the way that I can do it in a sort of indirect way, by all means, I have no complaints, and I'm sure that the other guys would appreciate my contributing and us actually having our first ever multiple podcast series available, because obviously, with the other websites, they have tons of more people and tons of more time and resources and all kinds of that fun stuff, and they're able to do this along those same lines. So if I can contribute in the same way, then that is exactly what I'm going to do. Now, I'm not going to make any promises, but it's what I intend, so hopefully it can be done. So thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll be back soon with hopefully another episode of whatever this will eventually be called. Thanks, guys.